Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. This week, man, June was a long month for being June,
Mhm.
and it shouldn't have been. But we wrapped up Perseverance last week with our episode with Jeff Earlywine, episode
Mhm.
99, which means, if I'm remembering my math right, yeah, Camden drum
Drum
rolling.
roll, please.
Drum roll, please. This is episode 100, a
Woo!
century episode, and we are shifting our theme to July because July's theme is growth.
I,
And
I
how do
gotta
you?
say first, come on, cheers.
Oh,
Little coffee cheers.
that's right. Coffee cheers
There we go.
for 100 episodes.
Been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of great experience, a lot of great shows. The Shackleton Leadership Show but continues to lead the pack as the most favorite by our followers, uh, which not hard to believe because it's such a great story.
It-
But one of the things that I was going to say something kind of negative about it, but then I was like, wait a second, time out. If you're still thinking Shackleton and you're thinking growth, you're like, oh, they didn't grow anything or do anything. Yeah, they did.
oh yeah.
They had to grow to change to survive.
Mhm.
They had to adapt and overcome everything that happened to them being stuck in Antarctica. And that right there is a testament to growth itself. And I think as I was about to just kind of wave it off in a non-thought sort of way, but really it's a validation of if you're not growing, you're dying. I've
Yeah.
said that before in the business world, but it works in the personal world too. If you're not growing, you're not doing something to change yourself. You look outside your window and you see, it's here it is, middle of summer, and you see the plants and the flowers and the bushes and grass and everything's growing, right? When it stops growing, it's dead or
Mhm.
dormant if we're talking wintertime.
Right.
Think about that. Think about that in your life. Think about that in your businesses. If you're not doing something to continue to grow your business, you're like happy go lucky of where I am now, or your personal life, happy go lucky of where I am now. Guess what? The rest of the world continues to move forward and you're stagnant.
Yeah, and what really comes to mind for that, it brings to mind, especially our talk with Dr. Batterton a few weeks ago now, but talking about muscles and recovery and all that kind of stuff. But then also you hear the same type of thing when you hear people way smarter than you and I talking about the brain, and there seems to be this pretty common adage in all those worlds of either use it or you lose it. And if you're complacent and you're not growing, you lose your ability to do things that you could once do. And so do not only do you need to use it, you also need to grow with it. You can't be complacent with where you're at because frankly, if you're using something like that, it's exercising it and you're growing it. If you're not using it, it's degrading slowly. Whether it's your brain or your muscles, you got to use it if you want to keep it. And so growth and having that kind of constant growth mindset is just so important in life.
It is. And I think the other piece of that is if you're not, then you're being complacent.
Mhm.
And complacency gets people killed. I mean, quite literally in the military, that's one of the things that we fight all the time. And if you take that analogy a little bit further on yourself, and you're not constantly improving and growing, then you're settling, and
Have we
you're
told the prairie dog story on the podcast yet?
I don't know. I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, it's complacency or indecision. I think that both of them are interchangeable in this one.
Mhm.
But we were driving out to a rugby camp. Would have been 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. And it was myself, a few of the other rugby boys, and then you were driving. And a prairie dog comes out on the road, and he stands in the middle of the road. And you say, if this prairie dog doesn't move, I'm going to hit him. Sure enough, about a minute and a half later, prairie dog didn't move, and the prairie dog got hit by the truck. And you just turned to us very quickly and said, indecision gets you killed. You can't be complacent with where you are. You can't be indecisive. You have to have action. And I think that's really what we're talking about here. So got to get the prairie dog story in there. If we've already told it 3 times, leave us a note in the comments and we will tell it again.
Yeah, well, and I got to put a little caveat on there. It wasn't like I was targeting the little SOB.
Oh, he wanted it. He wanted it.
Yeah, he's the one who did the dance in the middle of the road, and that was his indecision that caused him to meet the tire. So
he was complacent. He didn't want to get over the road that bad. He was pretty happy with where he was in his life, and instead of having a growth mindset and wanting to go get some more food on the other side of the road, he thought, hey, I could just stop halfway, and that's what happens to you.
Yeah, indecision. So, and going back to growth is there's so many areas that we could talk and focus on that. But if you look at how do you grow personally, it's everything from reading books, talking to people, having mentors, coaches, exploring, going on adventures, pushing yourself, because really growth denotes a change to what you're doing, your routine, your differences. That is growth. We're not talking about doing the same thing over and over again. We're talking about, the old adage of, in the gym adding 5 more pounds to your bench press workout to make the muscles stronger. It's that kind of challenge that you push yourself in, or doing, 5 more reps, or running the stairs 3 more times, or whatever those things may be. That's where growth comes from, is that forced change in yourself to create a difference. I mean, that's where it boils down to, is you have to do something different in order to achieve that growth.
Yeah. And I think that what that comes down to is, we talked about it earlier throughout the year. And if you're somebody who's been listening, we've talked about preparation, we've talked about planning and all those different aspects of it. But when you really get to the growth aspect, just like everything else, you have to realize where you are. You have to be mindful of who you are right now and who you want to become. Then along that path then is all of the growth that you need to take in order to reach those points. And so once you understand where you're at now, then you could start changing your routine. You could start mixing things up in order to put it together into that growth mindset. So it's, recognizing that you may not be talented at something, or that you want to learn a new skill or whatever it is, and just challenging yourself to grow like that. And, the last piece I want to add on to that section there is, it doesn't necessarily have to be in your business. And what I mean by that is, if you're wanting to grow, all of that growth effort, all that energy you're putting into growing, because it takes a lot of energy to grow. Ask any plant out there. It takes a lot of energy to grow. And if you're always trying to grow inside your business, the other aspects of your life will fall. Just like we were saying, you got to use it or you lose it. And so if you want to grow in other aspects of your life, not just your business, then you need to be growing in those aspects also. And that kind of growth is useful for your business as well, because it primes you for growth in general. If you're working out all the time and getting back in shape, your mind is going to be doing a lot better when you are working, even though you're working out a completely different muscle group. It's good for your brain to get out there and do that kind of work. If you're somebody who enjoys the arts, music, and you want to, learn a new song or learn a new instrument or whatever it is, you can show that I'm not super artsy, because those are the 2 examples I could think of. But if that's something you get really into, you can grow in that area, and that'll help you in the rest of your life, because it helps you to grow. So I think it's about balance when you start talking about growth. Recognize where you are, what areas you want to grow in, and then balance yourself so you don't get burnt out on something. In the workout example, if you're just doing bench press, how much fun is that workout every day? Holy crap. Showing up, hitting the same reps, same weight. Of course you're going to plateau. You got to mix it up every now and then.
Oh yeah. And the other piece of that is rest. How does rest come into play? You have to be ready to to take that break in order for, the muscle to recover and grow.
Mhm.
So if you're staying in the workout sort of scenario analogy, if you are pounding the weights every day and you're never giving your body time for recovery, then that's a pretty dangerous place to be. Now, when we talk about our mind and growing our mind, growing our understanding and innovation and things like that, there's lots of different ways to do that in that growth. But in the same sense, you still have to go forward and have more. You still have to take on the challenge, but you also have to monitor the breaks so that you can recoup and recover. You don't need to be reading a textbook on economics every single day. You can switch over and read Dilbert or some funny novel or something like that to help
Yeah.
change. But all those things still help you grow.
Yeah, and I think, to take the reading example, you and I are both big fans of it, as people can see on the bookcase behind you, and they can't see on me. One, because the bookcase is behind me. Two, because my camera shut off. But one of the best things you can get out of books is learning from mentors. So we always talked about how different perspectives from people are really useful, and how having a mentor who has already gone through that journey, already made those mistakes, it's a lot easier for you because you can learn from them. Well, there's these things called books, and they're about a bunch of different people over the course of history who have done amazing things, and you can learn so much from them. Frankly, going back, a little callback to the beginning of the episode, Shackleton. I learned he's probably up there like number 2 with most leadership lessons I got. I think you probably still have number 1, Otis. Shackleton's coming for that belt though. But it's somebody, this is what, almost about 100 years ago, a little bit less now, that they went out on that journey. And or actually, no, a little bit more, because it was World War I. It was right before.
Yeah.
Got that backwards. But you can learn so much from them. And you don't have to go to the Antarctic and almost die for a year to do it. And that's the beautiful thing there. If you read books on famous generals, you don't have to lead hundreds of thousands of soldiers into, huge bloody conflicts in order to learn the lessons that they learned. You can learn from them via a book. So that's a really amazing thing. And then I think the other aspect you're touching on there is just in the sense of just working the brain, and not necessarily working it towards your business. When you talk about, reading Dilbert or reading something else, that kind of fun reading is still so good for your brain, because it still works your brain. You still pick up new vocabulary words. You still pick up all kinds of stuff, sentence structure. There's things like that your brain is always absorbing, when you're reading. And so just reading itself is such a huge activity for that kind of growth. And then when you consciously focus that into specific areas of your life, then that growth can really take off.
I want to jump on something you mentioned about mentors. And, if you can find it, the best mentor is somebody that's in the same career field, same industry that you are, that's about 5 years in front of you.
Yeah.
Because that 5-year gap gives them just enough time to have failed and done things. And it's also enough time to where it's not too far out that the technology would be different.
Yeah.
And, the ideal, that's the ideal mentor. And if you don't have that sort of thing in mind, or really you don't have somebody doing that for you, it's worth seeking it out, because a mentor, when we go back to why do you have a mentor, is growth.
Mm-hmm.
Can accelerate your growth tenfold, because if it's like what I just said, that somebody is 5 years in front of you, if it's Camden and Verby or Cobra Valley Farms, if they had linked up with somebody doing something very similar about 4 or 5 years in front of them, they would have gotten a lot of, well, you probably ought to look at doing this, or this is about to happen to you in 6 months. When you hit this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And because those things, because they just walked it, a few years in front of you, you can be more prepared, and you can see the obstacle about to happen and mitigate that risk that the obstacle may cause you. And I think that's a powerful place to go, and a man, one of the best accelerators you could have. I mean, of course, as a coach, I help people do that also. But man, I would say if you're truly looking to grow, you need a coach, somebody that does what Camden and I do, who shows you, guides you, challenges you, and holds you accountable, and doesn't necessarily have to be in that exact industry, because all these things are really agnostic to industry and actions that we talk about. But then if you can have a mentor that's in that alignment, in that path, that's 4 or 5 years in front of you, man, you're going to be accelerating. You will end up leapfrogging over your mentor, because they're still learning the school of hard knocks, and they're sharing all that information back to you so that you don't get punched in the face.
Yeah, and we talk about perspective a lot, and I think that 'cause you're totally right with what you're saying. If you want your mentor to be in the same field and 5 years ahead of you, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. The thing that I want to add to it though is don't be afraid to learn and to grow from other sources. And what I mean by that is look for the transferable skills, the transferable mechanism, the transferable ideas from other areas of life, other industries, other businesses. And once you reach that point where you can find those transferable skills from those other types of people, then you can really hit that next level of growth. I'll use the example of I've never been in the military. I've been military adjacent, but as we always put it. But some of the books that I've read are generals, and I've learned so much about leadership and strategy from them. And you can translate that so easily into the business if you're looking for it. I mean, it's like we talk about this all the time. Every person going through any sort of business school needs to read Sun Tzu's Art of War. You're not going to go fight a war against anybody, but you do have a business to lead. And there's so many lessons in there if you're willing to find the transferable aspect of it and translate it into your business. So I think that that's where you can really differentiate yourself and get a lot of growth from it, of looking at different aspects of life and then looking for those kind of transferable skills that you can pull from there and put it into your own business in your own life.
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of goes back to something I was talking about several months ago, is if you're taking the time to read, to learn, and read to understand, not just reading for entertainment, how are you implementing those things?
Mhm.
So, food for thought there. Don't just pick up The Art of War and read it cover to cover and think, okay, now I got this shit. You gotta look at how you're going to implement it, how you're going to put it into play, and that's the critical aspect I think makes the difference. It's if you don't have that mentor, or really even if you do, it's such a there's so many resources out there to learn from. That you just have to pick a few and digest them.
Yeah, and I think that's really as we're talking about it, and especially when you get into the other facets of life, this is one of those things where the applicable aspect of that advice is to talk to people inside your circle, talk to people in your tribe, your network, and go and see what books have helped them. And ideally look for ones that are in that different kind of area. You come to me, I've got some books from some rugby folks that you could learn a lot from. Oh my gosh, Dad, I think I had you read it, Lewis Moody's Mad Dog. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, there's some lessons in that book that you can use on an everyday basis, not just if you're out there trying to play rugby. We used the example of Shackleton earlier. You don't have to go on an adventure across Antarctica. No, I don't think anyone out here wants to really go do that. As much as it sounds like a pretty exciting adventure, you don't have to go on that adventure in order to learn from it. You don't even have to want to go on that adventure in order to learn lessons from Shackleton and his men. And so really go into it with that kind of open mindset. And, what the last thing I want to kind of throw it over to you on, Dad, is right before we wrap this up, is because what really comes to mind as we're talking about this is something you talk about a lot in your time with the Special Forces, which is the cross-training aspect of not just being complacent and learning your skill and getting the best at this one job, but learning how to do other people's jobs and how that can improve your own performance in your own area.
Yeah, well, and also it gives you better visibility for how hard it is to do their job. you don't have to learn and do it. But if you, I'm thinking back to shows like Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs,
Mhm.
or what's the Undercover Billionaire one, where the business owner puts on a disguise and goes into the McDonald's or whatever and flips burgers and learns
Right.
that this is some hard stuff to do, and it's not just some meaningless mindless sort of person. It takes some effort to to run that job on the assembly line or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And when you get that experience and understand, matter of fact, before I kind of wrap up that thought, it just reminded me of Paw years ago, late 90s. He went to London and
Mhm.
spent a week shadowing Air Force F-16 mechanics so that he could understand, as the guy that designs the airplanes, how the mechanics work on the airplanes and how he could
Mhm.
change designs to make it easier for the mechanic to fix or do maintenance on an airplane. It's, if you pop the hood on your car from 20 years ago compared to popping the hood now, man, yeah, you can't even change spark plugs now without pulling the engine on most vehicles. So, it is that kind of a thing. But
Mhm.
those are all growth aspects that you, as a leader, uh, the more you understand how your team operates, how hard their job is from your perspective, the better leader you'll be.
You
So,
know, one last thing before we get into what we learned, because you just made me really think of this. This is something I've read in a handful of different books, and tried to build into the culture of the businesses that I've started. Is this concept of maintenance for growth? That you have to be able to maintain and look at the maintenance aspects of your business, of your industry, in order to really understand what's going on and in order to grow properly. Because if you're not maintaining things, your business is going to fall apart. You can't just keep growing. You're going to run out. The foundation's going to break eventually if you don't go back and maintain it. And so you have to go and have this culture where you're looking at maintenance as a valuable input into your business and valuing that maintenance. And then on the big picture level, when you talk about creativity and innovation, then you're looking at the maintenance as the opportunity for growth. And that's what you're talking about there with Papa, who, for reference, folks, that's my grandpa, his dad, going and working with those F-16 mechanics. Is they would have insights into how that plane functions and what it's like to work on that plane that he would have never thought of on his own. And he's a freaking smart guy. It doesn't matter. He never would have thought of it because it's somebody else's job. And so you got to have that perspective of the maintenance for growth. I think that's a really important thing.
I like that. It just reminds me of, one of the things that we focused on in rugby is, the foundation, the fundamentals, and always
Mhm.
the better you are at the fundamentals, the better you are at everything else. So,
And we didn't stop doing those gunslingers after we got good at them. You still got to do them at least twice a week afterwards.
yeah, refine that skill every day. Oh, good, good. So what I learned, well, that last little bit was really interesting, Camden, in that, the growing and maintaining growth, because I think one of the mistakes people make in life, business, is they try to leap ahead and do the
Mhm.
cool, sexy stuff without taking care of the foundation and the fundamentals. So, saying it a little bit differently than you did, but that's, especially particularly when we were coaching together and when I was coaching you, I'd look around the league and I'd see these teams that couldn't do the fundamentals, but they're trying to do all this fancy stuff in various parts of the game,
Mhm.
and they never got the fundamentals down, so they could never succeed.
Oh yeah.
So, good
I say,
reminder.
I say it now. I say this to the U of A boys every now and then. Of you got to earn the right to be sexy. You got to do the right. You got to do the. You got to do the little things right in order to be able to go do the sexy things that we all want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
What'd you learn, Camden?
and this is something you really put together for me. Is growth is a choice. Don't be indecisive. you always have the opportunity for growth. Growth is all around you if you want it. And so take the time to make your mindset one of growth, to where you're looking for that growth, and you'll find it and you can grow. Just don't be indecisive and get hit by a truck.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that prairie dog is memorialized many times. So he will not be forgotten. Therefore, he is still around. So, Camden, run us out, please.
We might have to get a name for that prairie dog. So if anyone out there has name suggestions for the fabled prairie dog, pass them along to us and we'll get that out there. Maybe we'll make some t-shirts. So thank y'all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your purpose, build your tribe. You could check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotashow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.